Okay, so final session. It's been a long day, but it's nice. Um, so thanks for everyone who's stuck with us throughout all this. What we've done in the past, when we were not meeting virtually, was we would have kind of an unconference conference portion of the conference, and so what that entailed was people would suggest all the things that weren't on the agenda that they'd like to see, and then we'd create a bunch of breakout rooms and then devote 3 or 4 hours to those sessions running concurrently. Doing it virtually, it turned out to be sort of a little problematic. Fewer people attended, and in some cases, it'd just be one or two people in a room. So we thought instead we'd just kind of do a plenary that was a sort of what did we miss thing. We asked for suggestions when you registered of topics that you'd like to see discussed. And we've compiled those. We put them on the same spreadsheet as the other. We had a couple of comments come in. So I think what we'll do is we've eliminated some redundancies and sort of prioritized the ones that seem manageable in this forum, et cetera. So I'm going to go through and read these one at a time, and then Rachel will sort of facilitate a discussion about each one. The discussion can just be very brief for as long as people like, given our time constraints. So one that came in a little while ago was about anonymizing teams. What are the pros and cons the organizers take into consideration when they consider implementing and enforcing the anonymization of teams? We don't currently do this, but this might be in reference to the fact that we've always maintained if a region wanted to try that as kind of an experiment, because people have argued for it over the years, that we'd be interested in seeing the results. And then it says which regional tournaments plan on doing this. I don't know of any at this time. So topic one, what are your thoughts? Would it be better to have teams be anonymous? So they get, instead of name tags, they just numbers, team 143. Yeah, Mark.
I organized the Philadelphia area high school ethics bowl, and the last 2 years we've anonymized the teams for the initial rounds, and the reception has been overwhelmingly positive. Um, and then for the quarterfinals, we reveal, we stop being anonymous. But this teams love it, yeah. And what's kind of a little odd is that it's the same. It's almost always the same, or a huge number of them are the same teams because it's around Philadelphia. So I was kind of amazed at that, but they were more concerned about the judges, and the judges don't know the teams as well. So so I just report it's been very positive, and so we're going to continue to do it.
Great.
Matt?
Yeah, I like it as well. The Tennessee High School Ethics Bowl has done that for a while, and they don't just use a number. They'll let the teams make up their own name. They'll use a philosopher or something in the name, and it prevents the judges from privileging the private school teams or just having in their head. We know Farragut High School is a rich part of Knoxville. They're probably going to be better educated than those that are from Sequoia High School, more rural, more poor area. And so that's the whole point, is to keep the judges from being prejudiced one way or the other. And the kids like it, coming up with their own names.
Good. If any of you are regional organizers, I'd encourage you to maybe give it a try in your region one of these years. And since there are a number of people from my region there, we can maybe talk about giving that a try as well. Colleen.
I was just going to say, I'm kind of in favor of moving that way out of fairness on the intercollegiate level of just, sorry if my dog's making a bunch of noise behind me. That, we're in the Northeast region and we've got Harvard and Yale and West Point, going against state schools. And, I don't think any of the judges are trying to be malicious or anything like that, but that bias is going to somehow sink in at least a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting, and this is also makes a good case for doing it in an anonymous fashion. When teams from the more elite institutions lose matches, they always think it's because the judges are biased against them because they're elite. I mean, I hear this from both sides. Um,
That might be true sometimes too. I mean, on both sides.
yeah, I hate all things elite. Don't let me judge Oxford. I'm just saying, John.
Yeah, my views have changed on this. I used to be against anonymizing because I thought it ran counter to the sort of friendliness of the atmosphere of introducing yourself. Like someone mentioned, don't teams introduce themselves? And I kind of like that, but I think uh, you know I'm slowly won over that there's maybe a burden of proof issue here where I was always like, the data doesn't really clearly show that there's bias, so we'll leave it be. But I'm not sure that there is much harm in moving towards anonymizing. And if it's possible that it is leading to bias, it seems, I mean, I'm being slowly won around to the view that there's not a lot of harm in doing it. And it does sound like where people have tried it, people like it. So for what it's worth, my mind has been sort of changed on the issue.
Good. Is it something that maybe works better at a high school bowl than a regional ethics bowl? So, for example, we could go anonymous, but when Utah State hosts, about a third of the judges are Utah State faculty, and when Weber hosts, about a third of the judges are Weber State faculty, and so forth. There may just be a practical issue, I guess. And I saw a hand, and it just disappeared.
Well, real quickly, I would just say it makes the most sense at nationals
Yeah.
because, yeah.
Yeah, that was my hand. I don't have much to add at all, except when I was judging at nationals, I kind of I was like, oh, I wish this were anonymous because I just the bias issue goes, you struggle against it, but it's just one more thing to have in your head. And I as much as I like knowing who the teams were, I don't think it helped, the same way as, grading papers, I don't look at whose paper it is. So for that exact same reason, I felt like it should be anonymous.
Mhm. Good. Well, it seems like a lot of consensus there. All right. Should we move on to the next topic? Rach, you say yes or
Yes.
no? All right. Okay. So this one came from the last session, I think, that I was in. And it says at a previous session, we ran out of time. It was mentioned that the rules committee might need to come up with some guidance surrounding teams using AI and ChatGPT to help with case prep or to cheat by having it entirely prepare case arguments. It would be great to talk more about this. Well, it might be hard to create strict rules around it. Having official guidance for coaches to help deal with it is really important. And maybe changing scoring to reflect the importance of thinking on your feet rather than prepared argument for any portion of the match. And that change, um, in the end, there was the suggestion in the session was maybe putting more points on judges Q&A and those parts of the presentation that couldn't just be committed to memory. Let me say this before I turn it over to you guys. I think we need to have a full session on this next year at the workshop. There's so many issues and so much to discuss, and I would love to get more feedback than we just get when it's the sort of smaller group. But yeah, what do you think, Nubia?
I think it'd be unwise to make a habit of using AI in this type of thing because I feel like if we use AI so much where it like becomes a habit, we might become so reliant on it and expect people to like reply as it. Because the only good thing I see using AI is for practice if you're genuinely like scared, like or shivering on the thought of speaking to someone out loud. But even then, I'm like debateful on a more lenient no because that's not how people work. And even then, what happens with someone that might be suspected of using AI during the call midway or the debate or trying to memorize points from AI when it could be invalid rather than taking the effort to look through it. That's my take.
Oh, good. Thank you. All right, looks like we want to put this off till next year when AI is even worse. Great. Okay, so somebody had suggested talking about ways of developing an ethics bowl course for non-ethics students, and there were a handful related to that. And Rach, did you have a lead in for this one? You're on mute.
So I'm just kind of looking at who we have here in the yeah. So I know that this has that some of the people who put this in the spreadsheet when they registered are not here, but I do think it's something that is of interest to some people who are here, which is just well maybe two things. How to how to put this. This question of how to help or how people can put together ethics bowls outside of the existing structure, like in other disciplines and so on. That's one piece. And I know we have folks here that are representatives of that desire. But then there's this other piece that I think is there ethics bowl teams tend to be pretty philosophy heavy. I mean, I know some folks in this call have teams coming out of business schools and things like that, but there are some people who want to use ethics bowl tools, but they want to do it in classrooms that aren't philosophy classrooms. So I know, for example, I have a colleague, he signed up for this, but wasn't able to make it, who is in communication studies and wanted to know, given that the main content of his course wasn't going to be ethical theory, whether it would still be worthwhile for him to use this activity that he thinks is really valuable. So I don't know. I folks have thoughts on that. Maybe don't need to spend too much time on that, but
Karen.
Wouldn't that be applied ethics anyway? And slightly discipline specific. So Jenny comes out of sociology, and there are like dilemmas that, and I can't even imagine them not having an ethical overtone, but business ethics, sociology, research ethics, we're looking into a course like that at UVU. Et cetera, because it's also a session at Appy. So it seems to me you could do that without having to focus on the theory, but you're still talking about applied ethics, right?
yeah, sure. That sounds right. I know that the person that I was talking to about this was interested too in he's been a public speaking professor. And so is maybe interested in using ethics bowl. He's a public speaking professor who's really disenchanted with traditional debate. So just because, you're right, it's so combative. It's not clear that the learning objectives are I don't know, really aligned with what we really want to do in the humanities. And so, but at the same time, you might think it's kind of counter to the goals of the ethics bowl to use ethics bowl to teach rhetoric or something like that. I don't know. But he's not here, so I don't know that we need to go too far into this one.
I'd like to know what he says.
Yeah. I think he wants to be part of the community and just couldn't make it today. So hopefully he'll be at some upcoming something. Or at least, Karen, you'll meet him when you come out to give a talk. We can chat with him.
All right. A lot of people wrote in to ask if Brett could get me a job in Guam. Watching you there with your backdrop, and I'm feeling very jealous. We can discuss. I also had a number of people just sort of generally put feminism as a topic to discuss, and I know Rach had a couple of thoughts there.
I have thoughts, but I guess I'm I agree with Matt there. I'm more curious about whether any of those folks are here and what they meant by that. I mean, I've got some thoughts about what that could mean within the Ethics Bowl framework, but anybody here who put feminism down?
You mean listed it, you don't mean insulted it.
That's right.
Don't put feminism down. That's just rude.
We've reached the silly part of the day, I see.
Yeah, about a session ago.
You've been there since 9 a.m. And anybody hear that? Yeah, more than one person put it. I was sort of speculating what that might have meant. I mean, one thing I was thinking about is this kind of critique of uh, the ethics bowl approach. Not a critique that couldn't be accommodated, I think, but you might think that the ethics bowl really values, some feminists offer the critique that um, ethics is grounded in emotive responses and in relationships and so on, and that people are actually socially discouraged away from that kind of stuff and more toward abstract reasoning. And then we sort of celebrate abstract reasoning as if it's the highest evolution of ethical reasoning, when you might think that emotive and relational kinds of considerations are just as important, if not more important. And does the ethics bowl really accommodate that? And I have no idea if that's what they meant, but that's what that got me thinking.
Yeah, and South Texas has a hand up.
Yeah, well, one thing I've been thinking about with Ethics Bowl is just, so much in our political culture actually, I mean, almost justifiably decries what they call civility politics, right? Where we all, dress up in suits and sit around talking about whether, trans people deserve human rights or whatever. This is the way that these things are kind of viewed. And I wonder, like, if somebody's dealt with like a serious trauma and they get angry in an ethics bowl match, they lose, when it's kind of unfair. I don't know.
Hmm. Right. I mean, I think this dovetails with something that was in an earlier session that I wasn't present for all of, but I was able to catch the tail end of. You folks
There's a difference between throwing a rock at someone and being intense about a reasoned and intellectual position, it seems to me. And maybe that's what John's referring to. But we can be intensely, as somebody else talked about, being passionate, but it doesn't mean that we don't have to be reasoned thinkers through those issues as well. Without reason, we're just throwing rocks, so to speak.
Yeah, Ron Claypool made that point in the last section, and in one of the comments I thought really well. Passionate and civil aren't as at odds as you might think. Colleen.
Yeah, to South Texas State's point, I mean, I think I would just say part of my role as a coach is to remind my students that be passionate, but remember the point is to give reasons in a dialogue, right? I've never seen an ethics bowl match get to like being racist or questioning basic human rights like that. So, I mean, maybe I've just not encountered the position or encountered the scenario to know what I do, but I think coming back and Karen's comment made me think of this of just like we are trying to present reasons to each other, right? And when we stop doing that, that's when we have the problem. And I think whoever is kind of asking this question about feminism or how Rachel's interpreting that question, right? I mean, feminist thought is an offering of reasons about why sort of status quos ought to be critiqued. And I find that totally in line with the spirit of the Ethics Bowl.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to impugn. Like, I don't think that people would sit around in suits and discuss this at Ethics Bowl, or discuss that issue in Ethics Bowl. I just think like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot what I think. I guess. Yeah, never mind. I'm sorry. If it comes back to me, I'll say it. Yeah, but thank you for your input.
Well, you know what? This has come up. We did a panel on civility during the lunch in this at Nationals this spring, and this came up, right? Like, it and it comes up most workshops, honestly. The question of what we're valuing exactly when we value civility. Is that just a kind of tone policing or something like that? Did that remind you of that?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah, well, I was just thinking about like it is the most useful skill that somebody who's dealt with a traumatic situation can learn, is to discuss it with people who don't understand your perspective, and to discuss it like calmly, right? I mean, it's very valuable, and so there's a sense in which the kind of question that I'm asking is almost like I don't know, it's almost like undermining people's ability to actually resist, right? You know what I mean? So anyway, that's all I was thinking.
Good. All right, so we've exhausted the topics on the list, but if anyone has anything else they would like to say about Ethics Bowl, or wonder about, or suggest for future conversations, now's the time to do it. If not, it's close to 4 o'clock here and I have to get intoxicated soon.
No,
Go
I think
ahead,
it's John.
Talk about chilling speech, Richard. Now, you know.
Go ahead and speak slowly. Take your time. I'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, I actually was just going to ask if you wanted to talk about the things that we didn't get to in our last session about the two things we didn't get to in our last session. If people want to talk about them, is one, there are some teams that are super, super well funded that can send teams to multiple regions, even in their non-qualifying, but you might see a school with teams in 4 different regions now, and that's creating a crowding situation. And the other thing that Richard and I were just talking about a little bit is that in a smaller region, teams with 2 schools, schools with 2 teams, it creates a mathematical advantage. And I was thinking about this because Harper's actually benefited from it a couple of times, but it did remind me that, yeah, we're benefiting from a mathematical advantage. Richard had mentioned, but the problem, that's not really about having more money, because if you're not traveling far. But I think the counter argument is, but it does tend to reward more developed programs that have been around longer, programs that have ethics bowl classes. So you're more likely to draw larger numbers of students. So we didn't know if people want to talk about that, but it is Saturday, or for some of us Sunday. And it's disturbing that Brett also wanted to go drinking because it's only 7:30 in the morning there.
I miss having a drink with Brett.
Yeah.
We got to get together one of these years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a whole slew of fairness issues that we can dive into, or
I think an issue that sort of dovetails with John's, and I've talked about it before, I've thought about it a lot, I don't know how to get around it yet, is Ethics Bowl tends to attract elite schools, both collegiate and especially high schools.
Mm-hmm.
The Seattle area has done a very good job of altering the terrain a little bit so that less elite schools feel free to participate, especially high schools. But that's a problem. I think I'm not good enough to navigate all of the details of working through that, but I would like to see it come to the table as more of a topic for all of these wonderful thinkers to figure out a way to get past it.
Yeah, I'm just reading a comment from Matt. The Canadian High School Ethics Bowl has banned private schools. Do you want to say a little more about that, Matt? Is that?
Yeah. It's Estelle Lamoureux explained the decision. She said they thought quite a bit about it, and it was just to prevent private school kids who have a dedicated philosophy or ethics teacher in class just coming in and mopping the floor with public school kids who have never studied philosophy before in their life. So that's been their solution.
Yeah, that's interesting. In a sort of related thing, John had already brought this up, but I've been kind of very concerned about the number of teams that travel to other regions as non-qualifiers, and my school's well funded, and I used to do it quite a bit. So it's not like I'm a can't, but and wants to. But if you have a school that sends teams to maybe 4 or 5 regionals, and there's a couple schools out there doing this now, and they do it a couple of years in a row. By the start of the third year for their regional, they have kids that have been to 10 or 11 competitions, more if they've qualified for nationals, and are really experienced. And if they're competing against a 2-year school where it's a brand new team almost in its entirety every year, or a 4-year school where there's a couple of people that have been to a few competitions and some people that are brand new. It seems like a real disadvantage for those teams, and I wonder if teams have the resources to do all this traveling and stuff, maybe they could use their resources differently and have more teams at their school and have many competitions and let the winners go on to the regional, or there's lots of ways to get students involved without just sort of creating these huge gaps in level of preparedness, everything else being equal. So I don't know, what do people think of that? Is that should we stop the non-qualifiers? Jonathan.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this too recently, and I feel like the one time that we went to nationals was we had 2 teams, and it was actually the team that I thought would do worse was the one that qualified for nationals. So, I mean, I'm in favor of doing something to limit in a way, like each school can have one team that's trying to qualify, or I mean, I want as many students to participate as possible, but I also think that we want to try and level the playing field, because I don't think it serves the Ethics Bowl to have. I mean, Taylor might do well every year, but I don't know that it serves the Ethics Bowl to have Taylor, and DePaul and Youngstown State. As much as I love the coaches and the teams are great, but I don't think it serves the Ethics Bowl to have those same teams going to the national competition year after year after year. I think it would be good to have more variability, and having a limit on the number of potential qualifying teams gives everybody, I think, a more equal shot at going.
Yeah, good. John.
I think Jonathan covered it towards the end of what he was saying, so it's good. I just didn't get a chance to lower my hand fast enough.
I wonder, Richard, if I think we might be in the early days of the potential of scrimmaging virtually. I mean, that has a potential to be kind of an equalizer, right? I mean, one thing we could do is like ban competing outside of your region at tournaments, but we could encourage scrimmaging, because there wouldn't be any barriers to entry with scrimmaging. I mean, other than like if you live in Guam or someplace like that.
They get up early in Guam, I see.
Yeah.
Greg, to your comment on there, I think it's good that the two-year schools can go to the two regionals, but they're doing it in both instances as qualifiers. So that's sort of consistent with what I'm thinking. I just think that if you're a non-qualifier outside of your region, they and maybe that's not even a bad thing. Other than I think some schools have sort of abused that privilege of late that it's now leading to big disadvantages. John.
Now I remembered what I was going to say. So two quick points. I mean, there's two conversations going on at once here. There's the a school with two teams in a region. That's one issue. And then there's this issue of non-qualifying teams going to multiple regions. And so I just want to say a quick thing about each. I think with schools with two teams, what's going to be tricky is region size. So Jeff, I know you often have two teams. You're in Wasatch. It's a pretty small region. And the 2 year can be some small in a lot of years. So this might be tricky. In a bigger region, you could probably do it, which is that you could essentially have second teams. You designate your B team, and the B teams essentially could round robin against one another, so that they get the experience of being in part of the competition, but they aren't factored into the ranking, so that every school has the same mathematical opportunity to qualify through that region. And so that's, but you could see why this gets logistically difficult. You'd need exactly the right number of B teams to do this. In terms of the only thing I was going to differ with you about, Richard, with these schools going to multiple regions, I don't think it's necessarily the case that it's the same students. What I saw is that you'd have really big teams that would maybe have 3 events the same weekend, and they had different sets of students at each event. But it still creates a very similar problem to the one you mentioned, which is essentially what you're doing is you're running your freshman team over here and a JV team over here, and then you're creating a pipeline of students. And while I think it's important that we get as many students participating as possible, these teams are not the teams that are like the weak teams, right? These are not the teams that are underrepresented. And it's like, we're just trying to make sure that we get enough kids to participate. They tend to be teams that are dominant. And you can create a sort of perpetual dominance by making sure that you have an unending number of people that have had multiple years of competition under their belt.
Yeah, good. I hadn't thought about that it's maybe not the exact same kids. Holly has a response to what I'm saying in the comments that I think is good. And definitely worth keeping in mind. There's no way to guarantee equality. There's always going to be teams with more and fewer resources. And I totally agree with that. I think I'm mostly concerned with just making sure that we don't have these sort of huge discrepancies or huge inequalities. But I don't know. I'm also sort of spitballing here. I don't know if there's a real practical problem to be solved.
Whoever's texting Richard, stop it.
Yeah, it's Rachel's sister got her dog groomed today, and the entirety of their family is oohing and eyeing and laughing because it's a funny picture, and I don't know how to make noises stop. It's a bad combination, but it's not me. It's Rachel's family. There,
Jonathan.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think John's point about the distinction between teams going to multiple regions and teams within a region having multiple teams, I think that's like an important distinction to draw. And I feel I'm not sure what to do about teams that want to go to multiple regions, but I do think access to competition is a limited resource. Like I think that in the Central States, for example, we wanted to get a second team in, but it had filled up already. And I'm worried that it looks like maybe we're trying to be more intentional about limiting groups to 2 teams before a certain point, and then they can add a second team if there's room later on, but I think there might be value in not stretching everybody so thin. I know the Central States, we went from having 3 judges. I think we only had 2 judges in all the competitions this year because there are just a limited number of moderators and judges available, given the number of teams. So I'm inclined. I think about like an analogy like college football, right? Like Ohio State and Alabama, and those teams are going to do well every year, and they've got tons of resources, and they've got, but they don't. But what Alabama and Ohio State don't have, they don't have multiple teams that are allowed to compete in the competition. That would be, I think, just adding a whole nother layer of disadvantage or unfairness to the thing. So I don't know. Those are some things to think about. I'm in favor generally of moving to a model where teams can have one, you can have one group and they can find one qualifying site. If they want to compete, if there's availability, maybe they get sort of in some ways the last opportunity to get into a region. But I think there should be that like one team, one region where they're qualifying. I think that would be preferable in my view.
I wonder to the one team, one region point. As schools increasingly have classes, it's like those schools would view it as important that they could have at least 2 teams if they have decent enrollment in their classes. Yeah.
I hear that, Rachel. I think that the only general counterpoint would be that what you could do at a school that has 4 or 5 teams or has a class is you could, in theory, run an intra-collegiate competition, basically by which you select your competing team, right? Where you could have an in-house competition. I think it's Loyola Marymount who does this with their business ethics, right? They have a business ethics competition, but they pick their competing teams by having like a business ethics fortnight where they call down to their best team. So that's in theory. I mean, I kind of would hate to see it because Harper's a 2-year school and we only get students for a couple of years, and so being able to field 2 teams is nice when we're able to do it. But I'm not blind to the fact that it gives us a mathematical advantage. So, I just have mixed feelings about it, I guess.
Yeah. So John and Rach, both to that point, what do people think of the idea of leaving things as they are with respect to the number of teams that can participate, but having schools declare one team the qualifier and one the non-qualifier if they send 2 teams to a competition, and you don't tell the students who's who, right? It's that way some students aren't going in feeling like second-class citizens.
But then if they win and you have to
Right.
go, you're
You have to tell them.
at some point, but you don't have teams being half-hearted about it. I would hate to go up against a team, well, I guess I'm putting this backwards. It would be unfortunate if there were some teams that were in the competition going up against teams that knew they weren't and didn't care, right? I mean, that would affect the integrity of matches.
We've worked very hard over the past 10 years to develop a really robust ethics bowl program at our school, and now I feel like we might be being punished for doing that because we can always field 2 teams.
Yeah.
Love competing in the regional event. I don't think they would be as excited to just do something that doesn't really count for much. So I don't know. I feel like 2 teams in a region still is workable, is manageable. I know my students would be very disappointed to think that only 6 of our students out of 20 in the class could actually compete. So I would still be for the 2 schools 2 teams per school competing in each region for qualifying for nationals. That does give us, as John said, that that advantage. But then we've worked really hard over the past 10 years to develop the kind of program that could attract students. And I would hate to be punished for all of that work that we've done to develop the program.
Mhm.
But we have to do something, Jeff, to stop the UVU juggernaut, because you guys take the top 2 spots every year. It's embarrassing for me to go back to the school.
I don't know. Rachel might agree with that. She's
It hasn't always been that way, Richard. You used to be the ones we always we had to actually work hard to take on your team. So,
Yeah, no, I think I was being kind of
Rachel's
glib. I think Jeff's point is very well taken. That would be a fairness issue too.
I mean, it varies region by region, right? Like for our region, it's not a genuine problem, I don't think. But in others, it may be.
Yeah, because we're not at capacity and
Greg?
Yeah, so to Jeff's point, I don't know if the school should have to face UVU-A and UVU-B in the same competition. I know teams are good from UVU, but for a school, it's like, okay, we've got UVU-A in the first round, we got UVU-B in the second round. It'd be nice to see a schedule where you didn't have to face both UVU teams or both Uber teams or something like that. I think that could have a greater effect on the end results. Even though the way the Wasatch works is, it's each school gets a bid, so it's impossible for UVU to get multiple bids. But I think that it could affect scoring and results in a way.
Greg, to that point, I think we should talk about that with all the coaches in our region. That and also whether teams should be able to face teams from their own school. I certainly can make a schedule that's such that you don't hit Westminster 1 or 2 or Utah State 1 or 2 or Snow 1 or 2 because you guys have been good. I think that would be easy enough to work out. Jenny.
Just since we're bringing up issues of fairness, and I hope I'm not gonna and I'm new enough that I don't know a lot of the whole regional rules, national rules, and all of that. So I know there's different things for community colleges and universities, but there's also an issue of fairness against going up against teams where they have a class that people can sign up for and get credit for when you're at a school where you don't get any of that support and you don't have a class. And so it's got to be all on your own time. As a coach, you're not getting rewarded in any way, shape, or form other than just the personal gratification. And the students are just personal gratification. So just saying.
Yeah, good. All right. Anything else anyone wants to throw out? Well, I'll turn it over to Rach, our host, to close it then.
Okay. Well, I didn't come up with anything flashy to say to close us out, but I want to thank you all for coming and for contributing to some great conversations. I know we'll be compiling some resources over the next couple of days that folks have been kind enough to share. I know some people are willing to share syllabi that they've discussed. They're willing to share PowerPoint presentations. And so we can be in touch with you in the next week or so about where you can find those resources. Already it's the case that if you go to the Ethics Bowl website and you go to the resources page and you scroll down, there'll be resources that have been compiled over the years pertaining to a lot of the topics we talked about today. So you can use those as the launching point. Thanks so much, everybody. Lovely to see you all.